What's up guys, it's me Jeremy, and today I wanted to talk about one of the more common misconceptions I encounter during my coaching streams over on Twitch, and it's why building full damage sucks. Let's get started. Now, this mostly applies to top laners, junglers, and supports, but even AD carries and mid laners suffer sometimes from building too much damage, or at the very least, lacking utility and defense in their full item build. Anyways, for top laners, junglers, and supports, when you build full damage, you introduce a large amount of unnecessary risk into your team fights. When you go for a play with a full damage build, your goal is to try to one-shot someone, and any amount of kiting will absolutely wreck you. One stun, one knockup is all it takes for you to get bursted down instantly. And okay, maybe you kill your opponent, but if your fight fails, you get punished super hard, and most of the time you get punished really easily, and even if you do kill your opponent, you're pretty much still guaranteed to die since you're so squishy, making the risk certainly not worth the reward. Full damage builds, and honestly sometimes even just building 1 or 2 damage items can be too much, and those kind of builds are incredibly easy to punish in teamfights and will make you very weak in teamfights as a whole. The extra risk is totally unnecessary, and teamfighting without tanks on your team is realistically almost impossible, and at the same time you're not going to deal any damage when you're dead, so diving in to blow up an opponent tends to be a very weak strategy, and so building tanky will often cause you to deal more damage in the overall fight anyways, since you survive longer. And at the same time, kiting someone who is not tanky is actually really easy. All it takes is one hard crowd control spell, a stun, knock up, anything, to just wreck you super hard, since the enemy can then just focus you after that. Not to mention things like flash and stuff can outplay combos easily as well. Full damage builds do tend to be strong in 1v1 scenarios though, which is why they are a fun path to take and often appear to be stronger than you might think. But League is not a 1v1 game, and even if your team is willing to split push, you are still going to have team fights at some point in the game every single time. Now, another thing to consider is that you have to understand your role in the game. As a top laner, jungler, or support, your team will most likely not need you to deal damage. You need to tank and play a frontline-esque role that your team can play around to protect your carries and damage dealers. And as a mid laner or AD carry, your team will need you to stay alive, since when you're dead, you won't deal any damage, so sacrificing extra damage items in favor of more utility items is very important. It's why lifesteal is so important as a stat on AD carry, and why Rabadon's tends to be an extremely overrated item on mid laners. Now, sometimes it can be okay to build some extra damage, but it's very important to only build pretty much one damage item, and it's when your team needs your role to step up and deal that extra damage. Maybe your AD carry is super far behind, or your mid laner got camped, or something like that. If your team actually needs you to deal damage, it can be okay to build one damage item, as long as you are somewhat ahead in the game. I would say about 2-0 or better is enough to start building damage. When you have a lead, a build with a bit more damage can actually help you snowball quite a bit, and the lack of tankiness won't be as punishable due to your lead. But I would only build damage in top or jungle if your team needs it and you are far enough ahead to not get punished for lack of tankiness. And even then, still only build one damage item, 2 damage items max. Another reason for why it's okay to build a damage item when you're ahead is that if you're 2-0 and you build a damage item versus being something like 0-1 and building a damage item, is that the time it will take for you to finally finish your first tank item after your damage item can be a difference of something as much as 10 minutes or more. And so when you're ahead, you will get tanky much sooner. And if you aren't ahead, it's likely that you won't be tanky enough by the time you need to be, which is usually the first team fight. Now, it is worth mentioning that what I'm saying applies very differently to mid laners and AD carries, since the role for them on a team will pretty much always be to be a damage dealer. For them, it's more about building extra utility over more damage sometimes. It's all about judging how much damage you need versus how much defense you need. As long as you bring enough damage to your team and aren't having a big problem killing your opponents, you should opt for more utility in your build. On mid laners, A ton of mid lane items have so much utility and completely counter a lot of champions. Your damage options should be things like Zhonya's, Morello's, and Abyssal Scepter, based on the current game state you are in and the champion you're playing. Rabadon's first tends to be pretty much always terrible, since it leaves you vulnerable in teamfights with no utility, and the extra damage often is not needed. At the same time, on AD carries, Quicksilver Sash, Guardian's Angel, or even something like a Randuin's can go a long way to countering opponents. Keep track of what is going to kill you in teamfights, and especially if you're ahead, staying alive will be very important, and you likely will not need the extra damage. So going a pure defensive item like QSS as early as your third item in your build can actually be really strong and really shut down some of your opponents. Just keep track of what the opponent's threats are and how you can counter them with your item build, and what you need to bring to your team, as quite often what you need to bring will not be more damage, but rather more survivability, so that you can live longer in fights to be able to output more damage as a whole.
Hey guys, it's me, Jeremy. Thanks for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, definitely make sure to hit that like button so I can tell, as well as you can check me out on Facebook and Twitter at Gaming Curios. And check me out on Twitch too, I do weekly streams. And if you really enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, as well as you can check out some of my other content up above. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.